I know you've all seen them, the pincushion scrap bag, and that's what we're going to make. It has 3 easy parts: an 8 by 4.5 inch piece of fabric for the pincushion, a 7 by 8 inch piece of fabric for the hinge, and 2 9 by 16 pieces of fabric for the bag and the liner. We're going to start with the hinge. We're going to fold it in half, right sides together, and stitch around 2 sides and turn it right side out. Give it a press. The next step is to make the pincushion part. It's a 7 inch by 8 inch square. We're going to take our hinge with the raw edges along a 7 inch square and center it. Then we take the bigger piece and we fold it in half along the 8 inch side. I put a pin in it just to hold it. Now we're going to stitch 1 short side and 1 long side. Now we turn it right side out. This is the part we fill with the crushed walnut shells. Before we fill it with the walnut shells, it's better if we turn in a 1/4 inch around the opening edge and top stitch it, leaving just enough of an opening to get your funnel in. So I'm going to start right about here where my thumb is and top stitch that. I'm stitching as close to the folded edge as I can possibly get. I've stitched it very close to the edge so you can barely notice that there's stitching there at all. And I've left just enough of an opening to fit my paper funnel when I go to fill it with my walnut shells. But for now, we're just going to set it aside and work on the scrap bag part. I've picked a directional fabric, so I'm going to make sure that it's in the upright position when I'm making my bag. This top edge that's 16 inches needs to be folded over and top stitched to have a nice clean edge. I just folded over and eyeball about a 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to use a decorative thread or a color that matches my turquoise. So I'm actually folding it under instead of over, so I can see the thread on the top. I didn't want to fill a new bobbin. After we finish the top edge, we fold it in half, and we're going to stitch the 2 open sides that are not finished. Now that I've stitched the 2 open sides, I'm going to fold the bag so that the seam ends up in the middle of the back. When I do this, automatically there's 2 points that pop up. It just kind of happens that way. To make my box bottom, I measure down 6.5 inches. And I draw a line across that. And I'm going to stitch each one of those separately. I just use my chalk and give myself an idea of where to go. And same place on the other side. It doesn't have to be exact. It's not rocket science. That gives me an idea of where I want to stitch. And I hold each ear out separately, and I stitch along that line. Now you just want to chop off the extra little ears, leave yourself about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And that is the box bottom on your bag. It helps your bag stand up straight and tall. This is the outside of the bag that you see, so I'm going to turn it right side out. And now I'm going to make another one with the lining. Now that I have a finished edge, I fold it in half and I stitch the 2 raw edge sides. I've stitched the 2 raw edge sides, and now when I open it up, I'm going to open it so that the seam falls in the middle of the back. And when I do that, you can see that it just wants to fall into a point perfectly on both sides. That's the little ear that you're going to sew across. So once again, I measure down 6.5 inches, I draw myself a line, and I stitch one ear, and I stitch the other ear, and then I trim them off. And this is my lining. So now I have 2 finished bags, the outside bag and the lining. I'm going to take my finished pincushion with my hinge, and I'm going to stitch the hinge right along the back where the seam is on the outside bag. I just eyeball it so it lands mostly in the center. So now the pincushion is attached to the hinge, and the hinge is attached to the bag, and I have a lining made. I'm going to match the seam on the back of the lining and the seam on the back of the bag, and I'm going to set one inside the other. I'm going to put a couple pins all the way around to hold it nice and steady so that I can now sew my casing. I'm going to come down about 1 inch from the top edge of the bag, and I'm going to stitch all the way around. And then I'm going to stitch around right along the edge of the top of the bag, but I'm going to make sure I don't do the whole thing. I'm going to leave a little bit of an opening so that I can slide in my boning. Again, I'm not going to measure it because it's just holding the boning. So once I've got my 1 inch, I can just eyeball it the rest of the way around. And I kind of follow a line on my throat plate once I've gotten past the hinge. When I get back to the beginning, I make sure I stitch all the way back to the very beginning. For the last step, I stitch really close to the top edge, and I start right around where the center seam is on the bag. When I get near the end, I don't want to stitch all the way back to where I started from. I'm going to stop right when I get to the edge of the hinge. This leaves me an opening to put my boning in. This is 3/4 inch plastic boning. It's very flexible. I need 18 inches of it so that it can go around the bag and have a little bit of an overlap that helps keep your bag straight when it's hanging from the hinge. So there's my 18 inches. I take my bag and I find that opening that I left, and I see which direction the boning is curling in, and I place it into the bag so that it curls in the same direction around the perimeter of the bag. Slides in pretty easy. You don't need any special tools because it's nice and stiff to begin with. When you get back to the beginning, you'll see there's going to be enough left over so that it's going to overlap. So you're going to go past your seam to get the rest of the boning into the bag. And that gives you quite a bit of an overlap in there. Now to finish the bag up, I'm just going to close up this little hole here and I'm going to fill it. These are my crushed walnut shells. It says Desert Blend Ground English Walnut Shells. You can find them in a pet store. You need about 1.5 cups to fill your bag. I just use a mug. And I made a paper funnel. And I put it into the hole. And then I just add a little bit of the walnut shells at a time. It flows much easier when you don't have a full funnel. When you have a little bit at a time, it should fall right in without causing any backups or clog. So I filled my mug about 1.5 times with the walnut shells, and that's what it took to fill up this pincushion bag. You can see it's pretty full, right up to the top, but I've left myself enough room that I can easily close this little spot and my pincushion scrap bag will be finished. I might want to use a zipper foot so that I can get really close to the stuffing. So that's it. My pincushion scrap bag is finished. All I have to do now is put some pins in it, wrap it up, and give it as a gift to someone I know who loves to sew. Thanks for watching.